Why is it that with some businesses, their legacy continues even though the person who's founded it has actually removed themselves from the company? And with some businesses, the legacy stops with that person. Now let's talk about scaling for a second. I know it's a terminology that some people love, some people hate, and some people don't really understand it, so they stay away from it, right? Scaling is basically exponential growth. Now there's different stages to that. It might be literally when you hired your first employee. It might be when you turned your service into a product so that you could have the same impact but with less effort. It might be when you first created departments for your company so you didn't have to be the one micromanaging. It might have been the first time that you removed yourself from being CEO so that you could be a large shareholder and not be the center of it all. And the epiphany of scaling is when you can remove yourself from the company totally, but the company continues having the impact that it had on the world as it did as if you were there. That is called leaving your legacy. Now, most people that attempt scaling hit a glass ceiling on one of those stages. Now, I don't know what stage you're at, but if you feel like you have hit a glass ceiling on reaching the next level, you're going to want to listen to this video because I'm going to decode why it works for some people and why it doesn't work for others. And we're going to break down how you can make sure that you break through this glass ceiling that you're at the moment. So I have a book here called TED Talks by Chris Anderson, who is the current CEO of TED Talks. He's not the original founder, and he has a story of how that transition was almost going to shit. So it's the little section I'm going to read out to you is called "The Day Ted Might Have Died." So it basically sets the scene saying that he was an employee in TED, and it was not up until then, TED was a conference, an annual once-a-year conference that had the people that came were super loyal to it, but they loved the person that founded it, right? So, and they were really apprehensive about the fact that TED was going to continue after this original founder guy left. They just didn't really believe in it, and Chris Anderson was having trouble getting people on board with the fact that, hey, well, this is actually going to be amazing, right? So he got 15 minutes to talk to them at one of this last annual TED conference. So he said, this is how it went. I spoke from the heart with as much openness and conviction as I could summon. I told people I'd just gone through a massive business failure, that I'd come to think of myself as a complete loser, that the only way I'd survive mentally was by immersing myself in the world of ideas. That TED had come to mean the world to me, that it was a unique place where ideas from every discipline could be shared, that I would do all in my power to preserve its best values, that in any case, the conference had brought such intense inspiration and learning to us that we couldn't possibly let it die, could we? And then he basically introduced this concept of ideas worth sharing, which is TED's current tagline. What he did in that 15-minute talk was show that the soul of the company was not going to be lost with the founder, because he demonstrated that he knew the soul of the company. After that, TED went on to become a global conference that happens all over the world and can be organized independently. So it's doing incredibly successfully, and it all came down to this transition of whether the new guy could connect to the soul of the company. Now, this is the key question. Do you have to be the founder to be able to represent the soul of the company? It depends on how clearly that soul of the company is articulated. This guy, Chris Anderson, got it. And every time you want to break through a glass ceiling on your scaling journey, on your growth journey to leaving a legacy, the answer is, are you transferring the soul of the company onto the next level, or is that one of the things that you're losing out? Okay, so this happens when you're creating a sales deck instead of just talking through people on verbally on sales calls. When you create a sales deck, that's one level of that scaling exponential growth journey. So that's the difference between saying, look, we have a platform that accelerates your learning. versus saying, look, the dynamic world that we live in has changed the way that we learn, and the current way that learning is being delivered hasn't kept up with that change. We want to maximize the learning outcomes no matter what background you're from. That is the soul. No matter what background you're from, being able to have access to being able to maximize your learning outcomes. So we have a product that accelerates your learning. Okay, or that means at the stage where you're trying to scale from just referrals to getting people onto your website and converting from there, it's the difference between a website that says we're the #1 platform where you can search and rate your ski resorts versus saying, do you love the satisfaction of finding the most perfect resort when you go on holiday? It's about, so again, the why there is finding the most perfect resort, the satisfaction of finding the most perfect holiday, the perfect resort. Well, we have a #1 platform where you can search and rate ski resorts. Okay, so you see, in both of those examples, I started with the why. I started with the soul and then went on to what you do. I know this sounds really fluffy, but no matter what stage that you're at, what glass ceiling you're trying to break through, start with your why. It is so important because that is what takes you on to the next stage of that exponential growth and eventually to having your own legacy left behind. I hope this has been helpful. Have an amazing day.